Yes, indeed, Ken Working in a very special edition of In The Sulky here at the Meadowlands this evening, because in the air chair, the popular voice of Freehold Raceway, Mr. Larry Lederman, one of the greatest announcers in harness racing history, and the voice has actually been silent for the last month or so for health reasons, and we've got to get this out of the way first before we start cracking jokes and having some fun. You are battling brain cancer. What's the update? What's happening?
Kind of a little bit of a surprise. Yes, I do have a malignant tumor. I have inoperable brain cancer as we speak. The good news is that I'm on chemo pills, and they're not giving me any radiation, and they're going to hope to try to shrink it. If it grows, things could get a little bit dicey, but they think that they can control it with the chemo, and I'm being positive, and I'll know better in 3 months to go for another MRI, and hopefully they can shrink it and something better on the line. But I got to tell you something, Sam. I've had the greatest support club ever. You, everybody here, except maybe that guy over there. Nah,
maybe George Anthony.
That's
right?
George Anthony. Yeah. I got to tell you, great trainer. He's got a bigger heart than that. And everybody, all my friends have come out of the woodwork. A lot of them I haven't seen in years, and they've just been absolutely wonderful. They have given me the reason. Now you know why the home team gets a 3-point spread in sports, because I got to tell you, you can't. I can't let anybody down. As much as I'm going to try for me and my family, I don't want to let anybody down. Everybody's cheering for me. Everybody's been there. A special tip of that hat to everybody. I don't want to thank the Academy, because the Academy hasn't done anything for me, but I want to thank Mr. Gural, whose determination is only seated by his golden heart as well, and a lot of terrific people. And Sam, I'm going to fight this, and I'm going to do everything I can to beat it.
And you've gotten calls from like anybody who's anybody in the announcing ranks. You said Tom Durkin called you. Didn't Dave Johnson call you? And Marshall Cassidy even.
Yep. Durkin called me a few days ago, and I questioned him about that stress excuse, and he kind of told me the truth, but I'll tell the National Enquirer about what that's really about. And then Marshall Cassidy called. Hello,
and
Larry.
Fred Camposello, if he was still around, would say, "It is now post time."
Exactly. Marshall, Larry, how are you? And I said, this is, for all the wrong reasons, this is really a great time in life. But, it's like I said, this is not what I wanted. Nobody wants this. But, everybody got a story, and it's going to happen. And yes, I do have a vicious scar from brain surgery, and also they put a little design on top of my head because they were going to do radiation. It looks like the blueprint for Hollywood Squares. So in the meanwhile, I'm throwing vanity down the drain. I'm not advertising for Freehold, but hello, Freehold anyway. And Sam, you invited me, and I appreciate being here, and I appreciate all the good people that are behind me.
Well, you're remarkably positive, Larry, especially considering you have to sit around and watch Judge Judy reruns all day long, and that's got to be very taxing. Now, you used to do comedy in New York City, and you started out with Robin Williams, didn't you?
Well, I didn't with him. We were on Catch a Rising Star, working on, I think it was 83rd Street at the time. I was actually driving a cab, and he was like the first act, George Wallace, and I actually came first, and Robin Williams was in the back, and he was getting himself prepared. I'm not going to say how.
Pre-raced?
Yeah, I think he'd have a little problem getting to the races. Well, but that's another story. He's very successful. But anyway, yeah, I do that, and and everything worked out. Some things didn't work out. Maybe they work out better. They could not so good. Sometimes it's good, not so hot. It's a little hotter. It should be a little colder.
Okay,
and
Jackie.
yes, I know.
Okay,
I never pass up
good.
a Jackie Mason, but anyway, yeah, I had a nice run. I did everything well, but we got to take care of the health now.
Who is the one comedian that cracks you up? I'm a big Larry the Cable Guy fan because of my redneck NASCAR bull riding background. Who's the one guy you laugh at?
Well, I love Jay Leno. Have a night. No, I don't like all Lettermans, I'll tell you that. But my favorite comedian, Rodney Dangerfield. I mean, with that face, how could you not love him? You start laughing no matter what he said. So, Rodney's one of my favorite, the Buddy Hackett's of the world. The guys you can't predict, I thought were pretty funny.
Well, you were driving a taxi at one time, trying to be a comedian at one time. How'd you get your start calling races?
I actually won an announcing contest and beat John Imbrial. And in 1977 at Belmont, I was working with the Racing Forum at the time, and it became down to me and John, and Marshall Cassidy was the guy that says, he was like my mentor, bring the tape up to the race, like we all have our guys who helped us along the way. And Marshall, and I had won it. And the funny part about it is the horse that won the race that I called they gave me a list of horses to call in the Bronx Tail race, and that horse was in the race because Peter Brandt, who was one of the backers in the Bronx Tail, also owned the winner, and he gave me a list of the horses. So 14 years later, there it was on paper. I had to call the same horse.
Now, do you get residuals every time the Bronx Tail is on TV? Do you get a check?
No,
That would be
I didn't belong
incorrect,
to the
huh?
union then, and so I just turned it on an hour into the Bronx Tale, listened to me, and I just turned it off because what would De Niro do without me?
Now, when you were a kid, when you were interested in announcing, who were your idols other than James Witherite and George Anthony?
Let's see. I would actually Jack Lee was one of my favorites. I don't think I was one of his favorites later on in years, and I think George Anthony would probably agree to that. But these things happen. But I grew up in New York, so there was Bob Meyer, and it was a lot of good ones in those days. Right now, they're a dime a dozen, right? There's too many announcers in the building right now between me, you, and Ken.
Might be too many announcers on the Meadowlands payroll, too, from what I understand. Unfortunately, I'm sorry to hear that. Larry, now, one of your funniest lines I ever heard, I was in Detroit at the time, I think it was maybe 96, 97, and you said, the only question now is when will the UPS strike be settled? What's your favorite funny line you've ever used in a race call? Do you have one?
Oh, God, if I had to think, there's so many that I use. I think maybe it's the call with the Gira, Joua, Joaji, Hijimoran. And it was funny because I looked at the horse's name. I usually don't look at the horses maybe until like the gate's rolling. And I looked at it and I said, Lar, what is that? And I said, I don't know what it is, and I don't have time to figure it out. And I just gave him 50 different names. And in fact, later on, like 6 months later, the owner from Australia called and says, hiya, mate. He goes, I own that horse. Let me give you the pronunciation. I said, all due respect, I kind of figured it out. He goes, oh, I get what you're doing. Have a good day, and hung up the phone.
Now, do you dream up your material ahead of time, or you just react to what's happening?
I would say 98% of this stuff I think of a minute to post, or maybe during the race or something like that. Or sometimes I'm watching TV during the race. Not that any of us ever do
like
that.
The judges watching TV during the race.
Like the judges, right. Like sometimes that guy at the Meadowlands, I can't think of. But anyway, I'm watching Judge Mathis or something to pop into my head, and I say, I got to use that. That's pretty good. Or a ball score happens. We'd like to be a full-service network. What's going on? I just like to keep it. There's a time and a place for everything. If something bad happens on the track, I all bets off, and like funny, or if it's a big race, I do it. Look, I can't drive a horse. 6 floors to me is close enough to any horse. I'm scared to death of them. I know you like to ride horses. I don't even want to draw horses. I don't want to spell horse. I like to play horse in basketball, but that's about as close as it is. So I respect what they do, and I take that into account.
Okay, well, we're going to have a little fun here. We have some announcer trivia question for you, and I'm going to read the question. You tell me what you think the answer is. Question number 1, who did Tom Durkin replace at Nitro? Was it Marshall Cassidy, Hopalong Cassidy, Butch Cassidy, or the Sundance Kid?
Sundance Kid?
Incorrect.
Oh,
incorrect.
I just can't get it right.
It was Marshall, of course. That was a tough day for Marshall, wasn't it?
Okay, well, let me ask you something about one of our colleagues, James Witherite.
Okay.
All right?
The announcer in Chester.
Name the only place that James Witherite has never announced. Flamborough Downs, Portland Meadows, Sports Creek Raceway, or Penn Station.
I would say Penn Station, but he might have called the race on the car at the same time.
Well, from what I got a call from Mayor Bloomberg today, it was Penn Station, but rumor is that the 814 out of Woodmere yesterday was announced by James Riggs, so I think maybe that we have to throw that question out.
Well, here's my second question for you. This involves yours truly, and I'm known as kind of bland. In fact, Hollywood Hayden said once I walked by a graveyard, 2 guys with shovels were chasing me. What Ben & Jerry's ice cream flavor is named after my announcing style? Is it Chubby Hubby, Chunky Monkey, Bonnaroo Buzz with a haircut, or vanilla? The answer is vanilla.
Vanilla. That one I would have gotten. Well, as long as Ken's in the building and he's on the hook too, he's in the firing line. Name the only place where Ken Workington has worked and is still waiting to get paid from.
Would that be Stilettos?
No,
okay.
Not ESPN,
right.
Canadian Broadcasting Company, NBC Sports, or Radio Free Europe.
I'd say Radio Free Europe.
That is correct.
Yeah. Speaking of Ken, do you know what his favorite 4 musical groups are? Because we know he's pretty tight with the Dollars and the Loonies and whatever they have up there. Well, how about your choice here is Cheap Trick, Tight Pants Syndrome, the Dimes, or Nickelback? And knowing Ken, it's got to be Nickelback, right?
I would say that.
Okay.
Our good entrepreneur here, Ron Goldman, always the man who's very easy with the dollar. He has indicated that sometimes Ken is not the big tipper.
He's not the biggest reacher for the check, is what
right, exactly. Here's one thoroughbred we got to throw in. Who called the secretary at Belmont? Chick Lang, Chick Hearn, Chick Anderson, or Chicky and Pete's?
I would say I'd like to go with Chicky and Pete's, but I think it's probably Chick Anderson.
Chick Anderson is correct. Obviously, Bob Hayden tipped him off on that one.
Okay, I got one for you. Who is the announcer at Monticello? Is it Howard Oil, Shell Oil, olive oil or cod liver oil? And he's a good friend of yours, too, right? Or an acquaintance, at least.
I would say Italian oil.
That'd be Howie oil, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Were you hanging around Roosevelt and Yonkers when he called the races?
I think, he used to do that, and people used to throw him dollars. I think he owes me $2. I think it was one of them, because he either called winners or people didn't want to listen to it anymore. I don't know which one it was, but we're Howie's friends, so we're just only kidding. By the way, where did Sam Mckee get his first job announcing? Hawaii, Utah, New Jersey, Alaska, or Michigan?
It would have to be Michigan, because they didn't let me out of the state till I was about 19 years old.
I think that's probably right. We checked
Michigan
that.
is the answer. I've got one last one for you. And you know Roger Houston, the voice from the Meadows, voice of the Little Brown Jets, my mentor, that sort of thing. What James Bond film would you say is named after Roger? Dr. No, Thunderball, From a View to a Kill, or Goldfinger?
I would say Goldfinger.
Because of the rings, right?
Yeah, just a slight guess.
Okay, well, Larry, we are going to do something special here tonight. We have about 24 of these Larry Lederman bobbleheads, and Larry will autograph them for you if you make a donation for the Standardbred Retirement Foundation. So come on up and see us after we're done with the pregame show. Larry will sign a bobblehead, and if you have an extra 5 or 10, it goes for a great cause benefiting the Standardbred Retirement Foundation. We're going to move you out of the air chair and move Dave Brower in for a quick look at tonight's race. And don't go away. We want you to do some handicapping and no free lunches. You're going to call the third race tonight, okay?
Half a dozen, cousin.
There you go. All right, Larry Lederman with us tonight, and he'll be back with more. So stay tuned to Racing from the Meadowlands.